Welcome, everybody. Today is going to be a very interesting lesson. And before we read the text, we're gonna now have another general overview of the entire order of creation. And even though it doesn't make impact until we go into the details and we get engaged in the details, in the small details. However, it is helpful to have a picture of a greater picture, even though uh, we may not connect to it fully emotionally, but it is very useful to see the greater picture. And then we go into the details, and that allows us to it becomes real for us. Rabbi Smith, can we put on the diagram? Is it? Yes. Oh, it's really small for me. Let me try and make it bigger. Yes. Okay. So we sort of started. We started. It doesn't come out so well for me. Okay. Yeah. It's okay. But yeah, but that's better. Okay, so I hope everybody can see it. It's really small for me, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to look at the paper that I actually drew up, and I'm going to speak from there. And I hope everybody can see. Okay, so the first thing before we're speaking about after Tzimtzum, after the contraction, and it's like the top of the hourglass is the kav, and the kav is the ruler. However, what it's ruling out is it's not ruling out. It's measuring is igulim, circles. And the first circle of after Tzimtzum is basically all the possibilities that will ever happen in creation are in that theoretical circle. And so it's called a kav, a ruler, but it's called igulim, circles. And basically the difference between what happens before Tzimtzum and this first circle after Tzimtzum is we establish before Tzimtzum it was a want, like the metaphor of a person who wants to become rich, but he hasn't taken action to actually earn he hasn't make a, he knows he wants to become rich. He even knows that he needs to be able to earn, like to get $1 million a year, he needs to earn like $3,000 a day. And he knows, like deep down, he knows that, but he hasn't actually decided to actually do it. And so the difference between that's before Tzimtzum. After Tzimtzum, he has this want to build a house or to build a holiday house or to create a successful business, whatever it is he wants to build, and he wants to make it practical. But that's all there is now, and that's the igulim. And it's more of a focus of the sense of accomplishment and achievement that he will have. Excuse me. Then that changes over to basically the sand goes down and it gets rebuilt in the opposite way, rebuilt as Adam Kadmon, the first man. And basically the original pleasure needs to be the inner driving force between to the things that he's going to want. And then that sort of has to be covered up by the next stage, by the intellect, and then by the emotions. And then in order to implement something, the desire cannot be what's revealed. It has to be the inner core that's driving everything. And this is called yesher. It's called straightness because it's in an organized fashion. The circles are now organized in a way that they could be implemented. And on the left side of the diagram, what we're gonna call is when kind of the wants to want, the specific emotions. Now let's go from the bottom up. This world, basically creation starts, we're inside God, and God has, like inside the brain, you have thought, speech, and action. You have the thought, which is the meaning, and speech is more like the waves, because everything in the world is like really, like it's almost like it's waves. So you have the waves, you have the meaning, the waves, and then you have the actual action, the actual pictures that are created from the waves. which is the actual worlds. When you're imagining something in your mind, so that's how reality is inside God. So we are inside God, and creation is thought, speech, and action, and we actually live in the world of action. Now, in yourself, what motivates you? What energizes your thought, speech, and action? So it's your emotions, and you can feel the emotions in your speech. So it's the emotions that are powering the thought, speech, and action. They're motivating you to continue to think about it. If it wouldn't be interesting, then you wouldn't think about it. So the emotion of, oh, you like something interesting, that's what powers your thought. And then intellect basically calibrates these emotions in a way that it's not chaotic. So it's the intellect and emotions which power the thought, speech, and action. But what makes each emotion, what motivates a person to have a certain emotion or to trigger a certain emotion? That's a want. There's a want. You have to want to be able to have this emotion or that emotion, because if you're not interested, that's what we say, interest. You have to have an interest. You have to have a want. So what's behind emotion is interest, a want. And it's quite conscious. But what's behind that is a subconscious, but we're going to call it a superconscious want to want. In other words, there's a trigger that's causing conscious want. There's a want that's behind the conscious want, that's behind the conscious emotion that motivates thought, speech, and action. So this is the workings behind creation. If creation is God's thought, speech, and action, and we live in the world of God's action, we're inside God. What's the energy behind this world is the emotion. The energy behind that is the interest, the want to have that emotion. And the energy behind that is a subconscious, superconscious want to want, or wants to want. And that is Adam Kadmon. Adam Kadmon is the want to want. It's the subconscious want to want. And behind that is the Gulim, which is the general want, which hasn't been yet established in a specific wants. In other words, by Adam Kadmon, we already established there's a want to want 10 different emotions, 10 different, building blocks. Seven of them are emotions, and 3 of them are intellectual. So I want to want all these things. And in Arich, so the atik is the sense of accomplishment, because whenever you want something, there's some meaning behind that wanting. So atik is like the attic. It's like the meaning behind the specific wants, and the wants power the emotion, and the emotion powers our world of our worlds, the worlds which we live in, thought, speech, and action. And we do live in worlds because, for example, the world of math, 1 + 1 = 2. You can't point to any specific place in the world where that actually exists, but it exists everywhere. So it's right here, but it's really a different world, like the world of Bria. I'll ask you, where is music? Where is music? Can you point to me? Where is music? Music comes from the world of Yetzirah. So it's here, but it's a different world as well. So we have layers. We live in a world of action, but there's actually deeper layers which we have access to. Now let's go inside, and we're going to actually, we in the past we've been learning 5 metaphors before Tzimtzum. We've learned 5 metaphors for Tzimtzum, 5 metaphors for the Rishimul, 5 metaphors for the for Kav. And suddenly now we're only bringing 2 metaphors: the metaphor of wanting something, the metaphor of implementing something, wanting to build a house. And we're not going to be bringing really so many other metaphors, because we have to explain the technical aspects of how this system of deciding what I want actually works. And once we've done that, we're going to go back and we're going to start using multiple metaphor again when we discuss the creation of the building blocks, the creation of the hidden spheres. the building blocks, the hidden emotions, the creation of the hidden emotions which power the thought, speech, and action which we live in. The thought, speech, and action of God in which we live in. So we are everything in the world is a thought of God. It's all three, and so are we. And just to remind everybody, since we exist and we don't like disappear, we are significant. Every single creation in this world is needed to make the complete creation. And if you would be missing, the whole entire creation would be missing something, and the whole entire creation wouldn't be complete. So your life is significant and important, so much so that God is thinking about you all the time, and thinking about you means creating you, just like you create a character in your mind. So, or similar to, that's a metaphor, similar to how you create a character in your mind, and you're so interested that this character should continue in your mind, you must really love this character. So God must really love you, since he is constantly deciding to think about you. That means to create you. Okay, so let's go inside and look in the look inside. Let's learn inside. It's very important to learn from the actual text. Rabbi Smith. Rabbi Smith, is it possible to bring up the text? Rabbi Smith. Second, I am going to go and get a hold of my hard copy. I'm going to look inside so we can learn from inside from the text. Second, I'm just looking it up. Are we up to 15 or 16? Just to remind me. Chapter 15 or chapter 16? Hello? $16. Okay, let me look at this. One second, I'm just double checking. One second, I'm just trying to. Yeah, we're actually up to 17. Just got confused over there. I'm going to start reading inside. Vehine, And behold, me'ata, from now, yesh lahavinu, there is to understand, beprate, in the parts, inyan akav, of the parts of the ruler, k'moshehu bebechinas igulim, the way the ruler is like a compass, creates circles. So a ruler creates circles when you make it stable. When you connect the beginning of the ruler and the outside of the ruler goes around in a circle. Behold, first we need to preface bebechinas reshis akav, the beginning of this ruler, hazeh, this ruler, sheba bebechinas erpnim, that this ruler creates a erpnim, an inner light. An inner light means it establishes not the possibility, but the here and now, the energy needed for the here and now. Va'achakach misagel v'nimshach, and then it makes another circle, and then it goes down a level, bebechinas erpnim, and it creates, in other words, we create a scenario of all the possibilities, and then a decision is made, well, what is the energy needed for the here and now? And then another, from the here and now, we look at also all the possibilities, and then it goes down a level to a decision of what should be the actual here and now from that possibility, and then it makes another circle. So it really is like an hourglass, that at the top layer of the sand is a bigger circle, and then it becomes a smaller circle, and then it becomes a smaller circle. And it's explained in the Tree of Life from the Arizal from 500 years ago. That when we speak about the 10 spheres, the 10 building blocks, the way they are in this igulim, in these circles, ha'elyon mikulam, the one that is on the top of the circle. Remember last week we looked at the diagram and we drew the circles like onion peels from the side. So when you put them from the side, the highest one, in other words, the external one, meshubach mikulam, it is the most praise. In other words, it's the biggest energy in it because it's the desire, it's the feeling of accomplishment, it's the want to achieve. Vapnimi mikulam garua, and the most inner one is the actual action of implementation. Garua, it's like the lowest, because the energy in that's needed into just getting the technical work done, that's the least. In other words, when you're running a company, so the person who has the vision, he's getting paid the most, and the fellow that's just running around and doing the running work, they're getting paid the least, even though they're very important, but they're getting paid the least because their contribution requires less energy, less experience. And when we draw up the 10 spheres of Yesher, of implementation, and Yesher means straight, because man is designed straight in an order. So the exact opposite, the way it's notated, is the exact opposite. Ha'elyon garua, the biggest, if you look at an onion peel from the side, the biggest circle is the lowest energy. It's just the implementation. Vapnimi meshubach, however, the inner circle of the onion is the most praised. In other words, that's the desire and motivation, and then you cannot have that spilling out, because it's going to interfere with the implementation. So the inner circle needs to be just motivation, and it needs to be covered up with good direction, with intellect, and it needs to be covered up with emotion, appropriate emotion based on the intellect, and then the emotion needs to be put aside and action needs to be taken. So the action is the least is needed, the least super energy is needed for the action. And that's how you draw up Yosher and a strategy for implementation. So there's the brainstorming, and there's how we're going to get this done, and it's an opposite it's an opposite experience. Now ubir hadvarim, and now we're going to explain the ideas. It's known that this original desire, even though compared to this desire of the first circle of the first very top circle of the hourglass, Hagam, even though in comparison to the desire which is not defined, pashut, undefined, hamuchlat, which is decided by Atmos in the essence of God, shenikra hispashus rotzen, that this rotzen, the first circle, it's in contrast to the way the desire of creation is in the essence. This is considered movement. Aval edayin hu behelam, but this movement is hidden. It's totally subconscious, and it is not revealed at all. Because the only thing that happens from before Tzimtzum to the first circle is that there is a movement of desire, undefined desire to do kindness, that's decided in the essence of God, mikvar, from before. It's just a decision that let's actually do this. That's the only thing that happens. That's what Tzimtzum achieves, that let's do this. That Pel Mamish means in actuality. We want to get this desire and want to implement it in actuality. Umiyat, this desire to do kindness. That's the motivation that motivates creation. Miyad she'oila b'machshava zeis, and as soon as this thought happened, she called that everything should actually happen. Hu nikra machshava v'rotzon hakodem shekelol kol ma shebeseichei ritzonos hapratim. It's called the want, which precedes everything, and it includes in it, koilol in Hebrew is like the English word whole. It's whole, it's wholesome. It includes in it all the other specific wants, canal, like we've explained this b'moshel habinyan, in the metaphor of building a house, because that's the only metaphor we're using, and we're going to be using only this metaphor for quite a while. So therefore, even when he wants it, let's do this house, let's focus on building this house, nobody knows about the house yet. He hasn't even gone to the architect. But from that original want, everything's going to be built. That's going to be the motivation for everything afterwards. Now we're quoting. It says he said, and it happened. So let's explain. He said in his original thought, in the essence, vayehi, and it happened. And it happened means that the original, the top circle, actually you're looking at look at the very top circle. That's what happened. Vayehi, it happened that this desire is now going to be accomplished, but it's totally hidden. And this is words from prayers again. The life of all the worlds. This energy, it's going to give the life to all the worlds. Merash, from the head of Adam Kadmon, from the head of Adam Kadmon is the bottom of the hourglass in this design, and we're speaking about the top. In other words, the very beginning, the very first bit of sand that goes into the bottom hourglass. We'll call that the head of Adam Kadmon, the head of the first man, as Ekev Adam Kadmon, until the heel of Adam Kadmon, the heel of Adam Kadmon, B'Seif Asiyah, is at the end of Asiyah. So let me tell you something that this diagram is incomplete, insufficient, because really the head of Adam Kadmon continues all the way down till the heel, and the heel is the world of Asiyah at the bottom of the diagram. That's where we live. We said you are here. So we live in the heel of Adam Kadmon. V'hainu, and now we're going to explain another verse, which could be cryptic, but we're explaining what's really going on. Kol yitzur le'nichad. We say every creation is not nichad. Nichad means separated from the chad, from the oneness. No creation is separated from the oneness, because we're actually living in the heel of Adam Kadmon, and we're connected to the head of Adam Kadmon. Shein prat hayesa achrein, that the smallest part, the last hayesa achrein, the very last part, shlei kadam liyes berotzen, it didn't happen without there being a desire from it, b'machshava zu, in the original circle. So there is nothing in this world, even the smallest part of the world, that didn't first start with a desire for it in the original circle of when God decided to actually make this creation. And on the contrary, it's actually the last thing at the end of the 7th millennium was actually went up in the original thought first. In other words, when you design, when you want to build a building, the first thing that comes into your mind is sitting on your couch or whatever in your living room, or playing with your kids, or cooking in the kitchen. But after you finish everything, like all the finishing touches are done, so the first thing you think about is the total completion of the project. That's the first thing that you think about. Then you think, oh, by the way, we need to order cabinets. By the way, we need to order the stone and we need to order the sinks. That comes afterwards. The first thing, you picture yourself inside the kitchen cooking with the granite countertops. That's what happens first. So it's interesting that the last things of creation, the things that we feel are insignificant, that's actually God thought about them first. Like it's written in another place by Arichas at length. And in the language of the Zohar, it's called the attic of the attic. Now, we don't mean the attic that's in this picture, attic. We mean the attic of the attic, and referring to the first circle. Oyatik Kastimar, the first top circle of the sand hourglass. Oyatik Kastimar, now, or the hidden attic. Now, I have to say that the hidden attic is referring to the lowest part of the lowest circle of the top hourglass, because in the lowest circle of the top hourglass, that's the sand that's going to move first. So it's going to go to revelation. So that's why it's called a hidden attic, but it's not a attic of an attic means it's like, at this point in time, it's not going to be revealed. But when we say the hidden attic, well, it's about to be revealed. So that means it's the last circle of the top sand hourglass. It's about to revealed. And this, I believe, the first circle, maybe it's referring to the last circle, but definitely in the top hourglass. This is called Raiva the Chol Raivin, the desire of all desires. In other words, Elohim that are very high. There's Galin b'mitzcha da'atecha kadisha. Now, this is very important. We say that on Sabbath every week, when the sun is about to go down on Saturday, that is a time where the highest level of revelation of divinity of the week happens. That's called the pleasure of all pleasures, like the sense of accomplishment is revealed in the world, at least from that week. But on a more of a bigger picture, it's going to happen in the 7th millennium. We're living in the 6th millennium, but in this towards the end of the 7th millennium, that's more. There will be a greater revelation of the sense of accomplishment of the entire creation, and we're going to experience that. It's called Raiva the Kol Raivin, the desire of all desires, Elohim, and they reveal themselves b'mitzcha in the forehead, the Atika Kedisha, and the holy attic, and the Atika Kedisha is actually the attic that I wrote in this diagram. So the attic is the sense of accomplishment, and we say Atika Kedisha, we mean there's 10 levels. There's 10 levels in attic, and the first one, or the wisdom insight is called the holy attic, and it's revealed in the forehead. What do we mean? What do we mean? So we explained last week that the Igulim and Yesher, the two sides of the hourglass, are totally subconscious or superconscious, and they repeat in Attic and Arich, but they just become conscious. To the subconscious or superconscious, just repeats itself and becomes conscious. So the pleasures, the sense of accomplishment in the first circles, when you decide to build a house, and when you picture yourself being in the kitchen or being in the living room or being like that original picture which you picture in your mind, that is subconscious, and that reveals itself in the attic, in the attic. Why? Because wanting something, which is a movement, and and the accomplishment, the pleasure, the accomplishment, are two sides of the same coin. The want is for a specific vessel, for a vehicle, and then there's what that vehicle holds. It's like the difference, like we've said many times, the difference between a house and a home. Do you really want a house? What you want is a home. The reason why you want a house, which is the vessel, is because you want it to be a home. Do you want the glass, or do you want the water inside? You really want the water inside. You just can't have the water inside without a glass that's holding it. And maybe, let's say, it's more than just water that you want. Maybe you want the experience, like sometimes when people want a coffee, it's not the coffee, it's the experience of the coffee. So that's the real sense of light. So he says, inside of any want, there's a sense of accomplishment behind that's powering tainug, pleasure, that's powering that want. And want and accomplishment actually become one. They are one, two sides of the same coin. And the undefined want that is in potential, in the desire of God to express kindness in potential, that we learned about, that we learned about in chapter 10 and chapter 11, when we really started going into the details. So in the essence of God, in that want, included in it is an undefined sense of accomplishment, which is in the essence of God, Anikra, which actually has a name, Shashuye Hamelach Batzmusei, the king in his essence. Like Shashuye means he like he's like playing. And when I say playing, I mean like a father is playing with his kids, or a grandparent is playing with their grandchildren. They worked so hard their entire life, and now they feel the sense of accomplishment that they brought up good kids that now have grandkids. So that's like a metaphor for Shashui HaMelech Batzmusei. Before a person marries, they're hoping that they're going to be able to bring up their kids, and the kids are going to be able to be married, and the kids are going to be good people, and they're going to bring up good kids, and that sort of is what's motivating a person to go through this entire process of a mortgage and going to work every day. But there's this deep sense of accomplishment. So we're going to call that Shashui HaMelech Batzmusei, what the king is envisioning, playing in his essence. And we learned about 3 levels of Yachid Echad and Kadmein, until he actually makes an internal decision. I am going to be a leader. Ana Emlech, I, Emlech, will be a leader, will be a king. This is the expression, the kingship, the leadership of the unlimited, that is before the contraction. All the accomplishment is at that point in time is playing with the accomplishment in the essence, with the higher purity. The first circle after Tzimtzum of like the sand, the metaphor of the sand is the first. That's called the lower purity, but this is still the higher purity because nothing happened yet. Atika da atike, however, the attic of the attic, that already is the first circle afterwards. Mokar kol hatanugim, which is the source of all the pleasure, the source of all the sense of accomplishment. Or it's also called the Rava is Aramaic, right? This pleasure of all pleasures, desire of all desires, want of all wants. That is the ruler after the Tzimtzum, the first circle. It has a bunch of different desires and different motivations that will be revealed. At this point, it's subconscious and superconscious. They will be revealed. And let's clarify that when we said the attic, the hidden attic, that's the lowest level of the top sand metaphor. However, it is the crown of Adam Kadmon. It's the crown of Adam Kadmon. And by the way, a crown of Adam Kadmon, since it's going to be motivating Adam Kadmon, it also has the energy from the first bigger circle. So even though it's the lowest level of the higher, the top part of the sand hourglass, it's the lowest level, but it's directly connected with the highest level. And is the crown of Adam Kadmon, and even Adam Kadmon, even the first man, is in a hidden want, v'tainug, and a sense of accomplishment. La'atzma, it's still very internal, very subconscious. Edain still is. The only thing that happened before Tzimtzum till now is that God is thinking, let's do it in poil, in actuality, hagili, in a revealed way. I want, it's like an internal decision to actually create a want and a pleasure, which that is arich and atik. Atik is the conscious sense of accomplishment. So in a way, it's higher than Adam Kadmon, even though it's low on the scale. And arich is the conscious want to create 10 emotions that are going to motivate creation. V'chein nikra atika stima, and that's why the lowest level of the top uh, of the sand metaphor, the sand clock, um, it's called the hidden attic. Bebechinas helam legilui. It's actually hidden, moving to be revealed. Like the sand is flowing, right? It's hidden, it's moving to be revealed. Al kol panim soon. Mashen kein reishis hakav. However, the top of the kav is nikra stima, the called stimim, closed, of all closedness. In other words, it's totally closed. The gam machshava Adam Kadmon, even the thoughts of Adam Kadmon, top is bay, it's not able to capture the real original desire. 1 second, I have to figure. I have to go back for a second and talk about begilu kemai liyes begilu rotzon v'tainu lahatzel. Never the pale. Shehu bechinas chelam rotzon v'tainu la'atzmeidain. Yes. So in the top, in the metaphor of the top of the hourglass, he's actually thinking to do things in actuality, to create 10 spheres, and that there should be a motivation of want and accomplishment to livre, to create. Create means create thought, God's thought, that is. Va'atika kadisha hu atayin shebachachma. And we speak about attic. So what's holy attic? He says the holy attic is the pleasure in the first of the 10 spheres, the sphera, the building block of insight. Fu bechinas atik yomin, and all the different senses of accomplishment, when they're put together, it's called the attic of days, because what makes one day different from the other is because each day is a different sphere, is a different emotion. So it's basically the attic, it means the sense of accomplishment from the different days for the different emotions. Varich Anpin and long faces is the want. Why we say call it long faces? Because it's still a dream. It's still a dream. So it's like a person's facial expression when they want a lot. The Atzilus, and that's going to be motivating Atzilus, the creation of the actual revealed 10 spheres. Sharot Matanu Baba Gilei are Atik Yemin and Arechanpin are a revelation. They're not subconscious, they're revelation of accomplishment and want. I'm going to explain in all the parts. And the top of, in the metaphor of the top of the hourglass, there are 10 spheres of igulim, of circles, one lower than the other. Who? Like it's known. Shekol ila makefes la'alul, the higher a circle, which is the cause of the lower circle, surrounds the lower circle. And the lower circle does not able to encompass and grasp the higher circle. It just knows of its existence. So it's from like a distance. Like we said, a circle inside a circle from Ezekiel. So it's better to describe it as an onion peel. That's how it works. And actually, this ends up, this metaphoric creation actually becomes a physical creation, like we mentioned before, of our universe. It's invisible onion peels of orbits. It's like seas that move around, and their stars are inside them. And as these peels move, wheel inside wheel, that's how the stars move. And what we're explaining is understood Merotzen haba begilui gomer, from a want that was totally subconscious, unpractical. Then the person decides that it becomes practical, and then they decide that it needs to be revealed. Shigam shekola arotzen hazeh miyud chachma mides. Even though when you want something, it has different parts. It has intellect. It has movement, which is emotion. Emotion is like motion. But the beginning of desire, it's just like just a decision. That's it. And in the decision, you don't see the parts. One nikra eagle, and that's why it's called a circle. That's why it's called a circle, because it's just a decision, and you don't see the different parts. Rotzon aklali, it's just a general desire. Makif l'chol mashu b'abaseiche, that surrounds anything that can be in, that surrounds anything in that domain. Mikeche, that it powers dafka. Ach berikach mokem. However, it powers everything, but it's like from a distance. Kemoi atam v'seichel l'rotzein. Let's give another metaphor. So he's going into another metaphor. He's splitting that metaphor of desiring to do things. How does that work? Hatam v'seichel l'rotzein. The reasoning and the justification, the intellect for a certain want, zeh, to this want, shenikra alul shalei, which is the cause of the justification for the intellectually, if sheya bekirov ha'erach el ilase, so the intellect is not really at the same caliber of the cause, shu arotzen, which is the decision. Because you cannot justify a decision. The guy just decided, that's it. Later on comes the justification. First he desires, and then he rationalizes it. He desires, why do you want something? Because I want something, because that's the way I'm created. I want something. So therefore, the justification that comes afterwards will never be able to grasp the want, because the want is what triggers the justification. And never will the justification be able to really grasp the want, because you can justify two opposite things. So what's motivating it? The decision that it should be like this and not like that. You can rationalize anything. It's like you hire a lawyer, and the lawyer is going to justify the want of the customer, and they're going to paint a picture that everything makes sense. And the other lawyer is going to paint a logical picture of the other position. However, from the power of the want, from the decision, that creates a circle. In other words, a domain. It creates the domain, hachachma, of insight, gamkein. And by the way, the domain of insight, it's not, we don't see the division. Like when you first hire the lawyer to do the rationalization, justification, it hasn't been divided into parts yet, into 10 parts. For example, the metaphor of sheikhad, of when a person gets a money kickback. But you know what sheikhad in Hebrew means? It means you become one. So when a person gets money for something, they can't already think differently. They become one with the person who gave. In a way, they see themselves as one with the person that gave the money. So now that they're one with the person that gave the money, they will find a reason for why the person wants this thing. And even though it hasn't happened yet, this reasoning and logic and justification is going to have 10 parts. Rotem v'seichel is going to have the want to create a case, intellect. V'seichel, it's going to have a certain logic, umidis, and it's going to have it's certain drive to certain emotions. Like even the lawyer knows that he can't just be. He has to get the attention of the jury, and he has to be able to hold the room, and he has to be emotional to move the people to make the decision, right? So there's not enough just to be an intellectual. The case has to make it emotional to in order to win cases. However, at this point in time, as soon as he's hired, it's just a general, general idea. It's a circle. Va'al derech zeh lo yasigenu ha'igul debina shenasa mekechet. So there's an insight into the case, but then there is the detailed comprehension, and the detailed comprehension doesn't really grasp the insight. It is a worker for the insight. And also the emotions needed for the case, for the legal case, they don't really grasp not the comprehension and not the insight. They just get things, they just move things. And all these circles are one on top of another. Until action happens. Action is the last circle. And this is still happening in the top part of the hourglass metaphor, because it's all in himself. Kol, everything's included in there. Ad sefer ma'isa, until the last action. Shu b'pnimi mikulam. In the top metaphor, the inner circle is the action. The smaller circle is the action. So too, in divinity, in the creation of the world, this hidden want, which is called the first want, which is hidden, mokol koloratenis, kolol miutzfiris, it's the source of all open want, conscious want. It has 10 parts, 10 spheres. Al derech zeh ha'igul b'tzeich ha'igul, like this way, like we explained, circle inside of the circle. Ad ha'igul the safe maisa, until the circle of the last action that God plans to perform. Shua rotzon l'saif maisa, which is the want behind the finishing touches of the world, the last actions. We're quoting a verse, whatever he desires, he actually does in actuality. And the original circle includes everything. That's the first want. That's when the want, when God decides that his wants should actually happen in actuality. Oh, one second. We have to explain now. Actually, we're going from Igulim to Adam Kadmon. He says so he has to now flip it. The opposite has to happen. The original want now has to be hidden. And he has to be enclosed in intellect. In other words, that is the motivation, and the intellect is going to be like the clothes on top of it. So the presentation, so a person may be very intellectual, by the way, a person could give a speech and they seem so calm, they seem so intellectual. You should know that there is a desire, a very powerful desire, which is motivating the intellect, but he's going to be more convincing if he doesn't reveal the desire. And it's just logical, right? So the smaller circle is now being surrounded by the bigger circle, even though the intellect is just a servant. Vaseichel makipe, so the intellect is going to surround the desire. Vaseichel misalem, and then the intellect also is not going to get anything done. It gets hidden in mislabish b'midis. It gets hidden like and you put on another coat, which is the emotions, and then the emotions, when they're appropriately expressed, they're going to be most effective. And it's like one underneath the other, one circle underneath the other. So it's really like the bottom of the sand hourglass, like in a pyramid. Ad saif maise, until the last most external circle on the bottom of the hourglass. Who are elyen mikulan. If you look from the side, it's going to be the highest one. Makol hainu kayach hamaisa, which represents action, bepel mamish in actuality. Hare boy mislabesh hamachshava. Inside it is thought of the machshava mulbash hamidis, and inside the thought, it's motivated by emotion. Of midis mulbash hachachma bina, and emotion is regulated and motivated by the insight and comprehension. V'hachma mulbash harotzen, and the insight is enclosed, is the clothes of the want, v'atainug, and the sense of accomplishment. V'nimsa pnimi mikulam. It turns out the smallest one, the most internal of the circle, where rotzen v'atainug is the want and the desire, or the accomplishment. V'achitzin mikulam, and the most external circle, amaisa garua, is action, which has the least qualitative energy in the bottom of the hourglass. And this is how Yosher is panned out, straightness, even though it's circles, but it's just straight because it's organized in a way of accomplishment. And when the higher circle gets enclosed in the smaller circle, in the lower circle, however, let's differentiate that in the high, in the top circle of the hourglass, which is still subconscious desire without actually organizing it to implement. You have to say the only way you can do that brainstorming session is circles. Who are that the highest, most external circle, the biggest circle, it's the hidden want. Which is holistic. It includes everything inside it. The eagle arishin shabu and the biggest circle is the want and desire for the entire order of blockchain order of creation, which is inside it. I'm just using the metaphor of blockchain because in a blockchain, in programming, all the parts of the chain exist at the same time. So in other words, this is happening all the time. We are living in the world of action, but this is motivating. This is the deep motivation behind our world. And this original first circle at the beginning of the Kav surrounds the whole Abiyah, the four worlds, the worlds of God creation, emotion, creating emotion and intellect, or expressing emotion and intellect in order to motivate his audible thought, speech, and action, which that's where we live. We are God's thought, speech, and action. And the beginning of the ruler, Hu Bechinas Hamshacha Hayulis, is just a movement, a potential movement, can make Kav Kotzer like a little ruler, Shemisamtem Me'ila La'olul, which moves from cause to derivative. For example, a movement from want to insight, etc. So too from the Rishimu, which we spoke about last week. Just remember, Rishimu is basically what happened to the city of Hiroshima after the bomb hit. Only a Rishimu was left of the original city. So basically, Rishimu is like it's just like a logo of the entire company. So So basically, God covers up for us, for him, for the people that are going to be created. He covers up for the creations that are going to be created. He covers up, makes himself unapparent, leaves only a little bit, and starts measuring something really small, very small movement. And even though this small movement is very measured, limited, hagbala, limited, Rishimu, we're going to say it's still part of the unlimited worlds, the unlimited domain. It's just like the end of the unlimited domain, which happens. It's just a concentrate. That's what it is. Nasa Bekitzer is a concentrate. It's the concentrate of the unlimited worlds. That's the Rishimu. So therefore, when we're looking at things this way, we're gonna say the beginning of creation really starts in the first circle after Rishimu, because the Rishimu is just a concentrate of what happened before. However, to create this original want, this is now going to go and make movement outside of the infinite worlds. In other words, outside, not really outside, but outside in perception of the unlimited. It's just the potential. This circle, the original circle, is like the potential for everything that's going to happen in creation. That's why it's really a short ruler. The movement is short. And what we've said is enough for the understanding. The kol ikar haaras hakav ein urakli is ma'ilo mata. It says in the Eitz Chaim, the Kabbalistic book, that the light of the kav, you have laser rulers nowadays. People use, instead of physical rulers, they laser rulers. So he's saying that the ruler extends, and it's called the light of the ruler. It's like the laser ruler. The whole point of the ruler is just to create a higher and below, because there is no thing. There's only God. So God creates a perception of higher and lower. For example, 10 big until 10 big circles until it becomes the 1 second, until these 10 big circles just continue evolving till the end of action. However, before Tzimtzum, when the core perception is infinity, then there is no higher and lower. There's only a undefined oneness, but tachlis, totally undefined oneness before Tzimtzum. Even though in the undefined oneness, God already measured up what he's going to do in the future, but it's still inside his essence, mamish, in actuality, which what's apparent at that point is only infinity. And since only infinity is apparent, so that's not creation yet. And that's the meaning. This is the meaning of what it says in the tree of life, the Kabbalah, the Kabbalah book, tree of life. That the Kabbalists, even when they speak about the expression of the unlimited, they don't have permission to teach, to speak about. What do we mean? Don't have permission to speak about? Because you won't be able to understand it. That's why there's no permission. He's the tree of life only starts afterwards. It's just very important to understand that when you're learning the tree of life, you're actually praying to Allah, praying to the essence of God, which is not described in the tree of life. It's just when you study the tree of life, you get an appreciation of the one who created this whole system, and you go, wow, and then you can have a direct connection to beyond that system, to the original essence of everything. The first place where we can actually describe something that people can actually relate to and understand is the ruler and the first man, the first character man, the big man, which includes all the souls, all the human souls till today. The Kav is the original source for the chain-like order of creation, and that could be understood. The tremendously great, vast amount of chain order of events, ad until the 10 spirits of the world of Atzilus are created, and they express, in other words, the emotions expressed in Biyah, the three worlds, which are God's audible thought, speech, and action. So since the first circle on the top of in the metaphor of the top of the sand hourglass is called the source of all sources, the cause of all causes, or Kadmon, or it's called the predecessor. We said there's also predecessor, Yachid Echad Kadmon, there's predecessor before Tzimtzum. But sometimes you can use the same description for different levels, so we have to be accurate. At this point in time, we're saying that the first circle is a predecessor. However, the essence of God, of the unlimited, well, in the essence of God, of the unlimited, there is no thoughts and actually grasp him. We can't really understand. We can't even understand the first thought, which when God decided to actually make that everything's going to happen. The original thought where he measured everything up. We can't grasp that. That the reason why we can't grasp that, because the world of infinity is separate from us. We don't have the megabytes in our brains to grasp infinity. It's sort of like beyond us. Nikra Kodesh Lagamri, and it's called holy. So when you say the word holy, that's what we mean. It means beyond. You cannot grasp it. It's totally holy. Mitzad Tzimtzum, because we come after the Tzimtzum. Now the original Rotzin, I'm wondering which one he's referring to. I think I just have to read it again, because sometimes you have the same words. Rotzan HaKoden, are we speaking about Rotzan HaKoden before Tzimtzum or after Tzimtzum? So I'm just going to read 2 lines before. I want to be accurate. And the original desire is called in when we read the prayers and we say his big name, his great name. So his great name refers to his original want. Shmei Gematria Ratzon, because if we every Hebrew letter has a mathematical equivalent, and Shmei 300 plus 40 plus 6 is the same methods as Ratzon. Ratzon is 200 plus 90 plus 50 plus 6. So when you have the same maths, it shows us a relationship between the two. So big name, his big name is a code name for the idea of God's original want. Now we're going to explain something very, very significant in the daily prayers. We answer Kaddish is a special prayer where people in the middle of Kaddish, they say something very special. They say, Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach. May his big name be Mevarach. Blessed means brought down. So what are we saying? May his big name be brought down. What are we saying? We mean his original desire and want for the world. May his big desire for the world be brought down and revealed. That's what we're saying. May his big name be brought down. We mean his original desire, may it be actually implemented in the world, because and that we see the kindness, open kindness. Like it's known, the Bechinas Adam, Kadme, Nikra Adam, the Bria. And by the way, if you look at it, we're looking at it this bigger picture. We're saying the first man is really the man of creation. That's the first creation. So we're going to say, when we're looking at the big picture, we're going to say that the top of this sand, of the sand hourglass, that's not creation yet. That's just like brainstorming what we want. Not specifically what we want, but what we want to accomplish. And so therefore, when we change from what we want to accomplish to how we're going to get that done, what do we need, what do we want to get that done, that is the creation. The creation is the second stage. The creation stage is not the brainstorming. The creation, we're going to say, the when the implementation team starts working and drawing it up, well, that is Bria, that is a creation. That is the first creation. God creates the character of man. That is creation. That's when creation starts. Moshe is borrowed, like we're going to explain. However, the essence of the infinite energy, infinite light, who we refer to that, and God is not man. What do you mean God is not a man? We knew that. We mean at this point in time, God is higher than creating the character of man. It's like it's known in the intent when we say a special prayer once a week. We say a special prayer on the Sabbath. Nishmas Chol Chai, the soul of all of creation. When we say Nishmas Chol Chai, and by the way, Nishma is also the breath. It's the breath of all of creation, the soul of all of creation. Shu Bechinas Adam Kadmon. What is the soul of all creation? That is the creation of the first man, which in our metaphor, it's the bottom half of the hourglass, when the sense of accomplishment is now organized to be actually accomplished. Bedal, and what we've said till now is enough for an understanding person. So if you just go over this, and if you're an understanding person, we've said enough. Now we're up to, we just learned chapter 17, and the next chapter is Yud Ches, which represents Hebrew Chai, life. So we've, and it's 17, the mathematical number of that is 17, and 17 is the same math as Tov, as good. So we've just learned a really good chapter, and we are ready for chapter 18, which is a tremendous accomplishment, and we've done it.
Well, beautiful, Rabbi Chirik. This is a tremendous accomplishment. I think we're over 30 or 31 classes so far.
Yeah, so somebody asked the question, let's answer the question, and then that will be it for this one.
You mentioned that at some point, emotion is set aside. At what point does that happen?
When you actually start moving, like when you're doing something, the emotion is going to now disturb you, and you now have to focus on the actual movement. And if you're going to allow the emotion to disturb you, you're not going to do a good implementation. You're not going to do a good job. So when you move from emotion to actual action, you have to sort of cover up the emotion, hold it back a little bit, and focus on making an appropriate, correct, accurate movement. I hope that answers the question.
Well, I think that's just really fascinating, because we know in all the arts where a person needs to take action in the world, whether it's the martial arts or marksmanship, or doing anything that requires setting into motion something that will affect something else in the world, then the person's emotions will actually affect that trajectory. So the only way to really accomplish it is to slow the breathing, slow the heart rate, to set aside the emotions. So you're not engaged in the emotional experience of wanting to get to a certain target, but rather focus in your own presence. And a person who's learning what we're learning would be focused on not only lowering the breath rate and lowering their heart rate, but actually coming to a point that they are just completely only aware that there's nothing besides God Almighty. And then when they deliver the punch, or they pull the trigger, there's no emotion in that, and all there is a complete connection to what they're doing. And then the bullet is not going to have any extra energy putting into it that's going to divert its trajectory from getting to the destination.
Exactly. So you have to. I was like, I saw a Navy SEAL guy. He was telling me how he basically puts his chest against the floor, breathe out, so there's no movement whatsoever, and between heartbeats, pull back, and that's when it's going to be accurate.
Say that again. Wait,
So
he does chest on the floor.
Chest on the floor. Feel the heartbeat when the chest is on the floor. Breathe all the way air out, and between heartbeats, pull back.
So at that moment, there's no influence on even the breathing or the heartbeat.
Exactly, no emotion whatsoever. Yeah.
Wow. There's also something interesting enough in marksmanship, that if you put too much force, if there's too much gunpowder in the bullet, it introduces a wobble. It's called not a tailspin, a tail wobble or something like that. It actually, the bullet's going very fast, but it starts to wobble. The tail bounces up and down, which also disturbs the travel of the bullet. So it's going back to what you were saying earlier about the person who's delivering words, and he is saying it in a way, he's in a certain sense concealing and holding back on the force of what he wants to say in order that it should have the greatest effect. Because if there's emotion put into the shot, or there's too much energy put into the shot, then it will actually not hit its mark. And the goal of everything that we do, the marksmanship analogy, or if you watch in martial arts, also a real grounded person puts very, very little, there's no extra energy, and there's no side dispersion of energy in the action, because that's the only way. Everything that we do, every word that we utter, every action that we take is actually having an effect in the world. We are making use of the way that Hashem has set up the world with these, what we call laws in nature. But I can cause something to happen from here to affect someone else over there. Either, giving the marksmanship example. So if we are conscious of that same intention, everything that we do, everything we're doing is actually, every word we utter is supposed to land at a target. It's not that, just like it would make no sense for marksmen to sit there and like start spraying bullets, right? when you see these police shootings and the police side, shot 40 bullets, that's because there was a lack of grounding. They were not grounded at the time. They were excited. They were emotionally agitated. They were fearful, and they were driving at a result. So they were just unloading bullets. And it's just wild. It's real. It's really just what we call a firefight. It's just wildfire all over the place. But that's not what a marksman is trained to do. Marksman is trained to deliver something that he has to a specific place. So the same thing is when we speak and every action that we take. Are we just sending off words and actions all over into the world, just chaotic? And maybe something will be successful, maybe something will land, but there's no real planning, there's no real intention in it. It's just a lot of energy. Or am I conscious of the fact that every single word that's coming out of my mouth is meant to go from my heart directly into the heart of the person that is listening to it? And when I have that intention, then it comes across. First of all, I'm in a completely different place because I'm focused not on what I'm saying, I'm focused on touching the other person. And then it will have an effect. No matter how, and I'll add just one other point, no matter how charged the subject is. No matter how worked up another person can get about the person that he's interacting with. My job is not to get confused by those charges. My job is to stay focused on the message I have to deliver. And that's really what Avram Avinu did. Avram Avinu stayed calm because he was connected to God Almighty. He was able to deliver the message without getting agitated by the chaos, the opposition and the chaos that was around him and directed at him. And therefore he was able to affect people and move them, because he was not dissipating his energy in the agitation. He was looking at every word as going to a particular mark.
So it goes through a multiple filter process, the intellect, and then before it goes into action, it needs a second filter to double check to make sure that the right amount of energy is spent. So the intellect filters the want, and you get emotion. Emotion is intelligent. Emotion is really an intelligent want. But then that needs to be again it needs to be checked over again right before actually taking action.
Right.
Not to spend any extra energy, because that may take the action off mark.
Right. And to bring bring to bear multiple emotions. Because on one hand, we have the feeling, let's say, of love, we want to give, but then we have to set definition and boundary to it. That's the midah of gevura. So we need to be bringing to bear all the 10 keiches. You're talking earlier with the number 10, the 10 keiches and nefesh. We have to bring to bear each one of those aspects to create the proper delivery package. It's actually much more involved than the marksman, because the marksman merely has to take, there's components to doing it well, but there's only one direction, which is he has to pull the trigger and trigger this item to launch and travel through space. That's all he really has to do. He has to hold it straight and hit the ignition charge at the back, and that's it. Nothing else he has to do. But when we're involved in interacting with other people and interacting with God, then we have many, many different aspects that have to be, it's multifaceted. It's like living in 10 dimensions and bringing them all to the correct formulation, to the correct compound that will create the exact proper contribution to that moment in time.
Yeah, we had another question or comment. We had like 2 comments I saw.
Okay, I'll read them here. I have heard an opinion that emotion is more like a static of the mind, something to be turned off or set aside. However, here it seems that emotion is understood positively because it is the basis of action. Is that correct?
Yes, it's very positive, very important. It's not just a static of the mind. It is very positive. The mind takes the will and desire and filters the will and desire to be something that can be constructive, and that is what emotion is. But then it needs to be filtered again before actually taking the action to make sure that the end state is according to the original desire.
Another question over here. I think you mentioned that God's original intention was to become a king or become a leader. What is the definition of a leader?
So a leader is that you have, well, a leader is that you have separate things. The pleasure of leadership is not that you just control your hands and feet or a speaker, but you actually, it's like an ultimate giver. That, you know, if I do training and I learn how to speak very well, and let's say I learn martial arts and I learn how to control my body very well, that is an accomplishment. Or I learn how to do you know, jump from high places. What's it called? Parkour or something. That's great, but it's just me over myself. But if I can actually become a teacher and help others achieve their potential, and people that are totally separate from me, and I can guide people that are totally separate from me into their potential. So that is leadership. It's a whole new level. It's a much greater level. It's just, when I'm working with myself, it's just me accomplishing with myself. But if I have a lot of people following me, then I'm like, it's like I'm not 10x, I'm not 100x. It's all these people. I'm bringing them to their greatest potential. And let's take it another level. I get them to be leaders. I get them to be leaders, and they get other people to be leaders. So the multiplication is just mind-boggling of the achievement that's achieved. So when I succeeded in controlling myself, it's a certain level of accomplishment and pleasure. But when I succeed in doing this for totally separate people, it's the accomplishment is mind-boggling, and that is the achievement of being a king. So God, to be able to do that, he has to create the sense of separation, that the creations don't feel that they are directly part of him, because then that accomplishment wouldn't be able to be achieved. That each individual spark will be guided to their full potential, as if they are entirety in themselves. I hope I'm.
So each one is okay. So they're very beautiful. I think that if I could just try it from a slightly different angle, but I think it comes to the same place, is that a real leader is first and foremost is in full mastery of himself.
Yes.
All his faculties. Because we tend to look and see, oh, the guy was a leader. We see the moment that gets put in the headlines, and we see, okay, the guy said, let's charge, and the unit charged, let's say. So he's a leader. But what really has to be, there's many moments before that. First of all, he has to be total mastery of his own emotions and his own intellect. Be able to take in all the information, decide what's relevant, and go through all the steps of Chochmah, Bin, and Das. He then has to be committed to the commander's intent. He has to be focused on the commander's intent. He can't allow the distractions to come into place. He can't allow all pieces of information that could take him off track. He has to hold himself back from acting at the times when it's not appropriate to act, because the moment you just see in the headlines, he charged. But there were 3 hours beforehand that he didn't charge because he had an intuition that wasn't the right time to charge. So he was able to hold himself back and wait for the exact moment, and maybe even regroup. Just like if the marksman is getting weary he can't force the shot. He has to then regroup, close his eyes, rest his hands, rest his muscles, and start again, because going backwards is the only way to actually accomplish what he wanted to accomplish. So there's many different, he has to be able to restrain himself. He has to have the endurance. He has the mastery of himself. He has to not be afraid of what his subordinates are going to say and what his superiors are going to say. Many different aspects. So then once he's a master on himself and has complete mastery, then just by his very existence, he provides an inspiring example, a living example for those around him. He doesn't have to talk very much because everyone sees in his countenance and his bearing his mastery. And what it does is it resonates with their own nobility inside of them to emulate and bring out of themselves, not to mimic him, but to bring out of themselves their own nobility, their own sense of mastery over themselves. And that's really what triggers the massive ignition of all these other people to become leaders also. And that's where the multiplier comes into effect. It's not through any force on his part. It's just from his countenance and his demeanor and his bearing that people see. When you see a person walking into a room who is a true person, true leader, then everyone stands up. You don't need any titles. You don't even know who the person is, because you recognize immediately what this person is about. So our interior recognizes that and respects that and wants to emulate that and wants to bring that out of ourselves.
Yeah. So, yeah, I remember you remind me of the Sun Tzu writes that you can figure out the end of a battle when the general does math all on his own. He can actually figure out what the end of the battle is going to be if he makes good calculations. But that basically is making all his soldiers are basically his arms and feet. But what Napoleon did at the beginning of his leadership is he made all the local leaders make decisions on their own to the best of their knowledge. With the guy on the ground makes a decision because they have a close to the action. So he not only was the leader as if he made calculations, he actually made everybody leaders, and they made their decisions on how to accomplish the commander's intent in the best way without having him to control it. So in a way, he was a much greater leader than what Sun Tzu is speaking about, the general that just sits on his own and he does math. It's a greater king. So that's a multiply.
Because he was empowering all these people to have their own leadership ability.
Yes. So that's a real leader, king.
Hold on one second.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And I think that's something that, each one of us has to take to heart, that the ability, it says in Hasidus, I think it's quoting from Medrash somewhere, it says that how could you conquer the outside world if you haven't conquered yourself yet? How can you conquer the distant lands if you haven't yet conquered the land close to where the king's palace is? Basically, the concept is. And the Alter was explaining that what that means is you really need to have mastery over your own domain. And that's number one. Number two is, I just want to bring up the calculations point to Sun Tzu, is that Sun Tzu is operating in the world of nature, and he's operating in the world of man's prowess and the ability to array forces against other forces and make his calculations. But from the Torah perspective, we should perhaps be aware of the calculations on a certain level, but recognize that they're limited in their two things. One is that's bound by the laws of nature. And number two, it's bound by our intellectual capacity to to those calculations. We see that in every significant battle of the Jewish people that we celebrate, all involved completely impossible odds, meaning to say that the calculations according to Sun Tzu's model would always fail. The Jewish leader, if you take the Maccabees, for example, there were Matisyahu and his there was 7 sons or 11. There was the whole army was like 11 people at certain points. So, and they were arrayed against the greatest army of the time with the equivalent of massive tanks and they had elephants. And so the calculations only take us so far. We really have to transcend the calculation to see what's God's intent. If God intends us to go into battle and to fight a war, then we're not in any way intimidated by the calculations. We're not limited by the calculations. Same thing with the story of Purim, where you go to the stories of the great victories of David HaMelech and all through Tanakh, all through the Torah and the scripture, the prophets and the writings, holy writings, that case after case of completely impossible numbers, because the Torah grounded forces, the Jewish forces, were drawing down the strength of God Almighty and transcending whatever was apparent according to the laws of warfare and according to the laws of nature. So I think that's just important that we have to keep that in mind and always recognize that we are meant to do battle in situations that the mathematics make no sense whatsoever, because it's God's power that will bring into the equation things that are not even possible for us to calculate in an equation.
Right. So this is what we're talking about, that we need to go through the Seder Ishtarshalos and realize, 1 second, connect to the intellect, to the emotion, go higher, to the want, to the accomplishment, to the accomplishment of the accomplishment, to the original circle, go to the essence where there's no limits. Improve ourselves to connect to the essence, and then we don't know, things can happen beyond, like we mentioned today, that the mind cannot grasp the want, like it's beyond our calculation, but it can happen. So we make a calculation, but we know we can't really grasp, and we have to connect. So we have to better ourselves. And you know what? Every single person has the access to this. Every single person has the access to the essence of God. They just have to connect to themselves in a deeper way, improve their behavior, ask God to help them be masters of themselves and be organized, yosher, be organized internally. And then we have the power of the entire power of God behind us. Even when it's mathematically, right, this world doesn't make sense.
Right.
You know, Esther, she first made a spiritual preparation before making a physical vessel for victory. So that's the first thing. We need to make a spiritual internal calculation to improve ourselves, to connect to the essence, and then just go for it. Make the best calculation we can, but we can't really just for the war.
Well, as we know that in order to split the sea, when Moses was leaving the Jewish people out of Egypt, and they were supposed to walk through the sea, and it wasn't splitting, and it took the first person to walk in, Nachshon ben Aminadab, to walk in, and he kept walking in and went deeper and deeper until it was up to his neck, and only then did it split. So according to all calculations, any sane and rational person would have said, this doesn't look like it's likely to happen, and number two, it's not working. But the Rebbe takes it a step further, and he says, well, actually, when you perceive a sea as in an ocean, then know that God has placed you here to split it. That you're called upon, each one of us is called upon to do something that is completely above the order of nature. And when we have that recognition that the sea was put there by God, and I'm put here by God, and my job is to split that sea, then it will happen.
Yeah.
God willing. Okay, so we're going to pause now, and then we'll say a few words about the parsha. Thank you so much, Rabbi Chirik, for the beautiful shir.
Thank you very much for hosting.